So Gilead is trying to develop this drug. It's known as remdesivir. Actually, they've already developed this drug, and the US government, meaning the taxpayer, has given Gilead a whopping $79 million in research and development money in order to help them develop this drug. Now, they had some success using remdesivir for Ebola, and there's also some evidence indicating that it could really help in treating individuals who have contracted coronavirus or COVID-19. But here's the problem. The drug was on the market, apparently, at some point, but it is no longer on the market. What the pharmaceutical company did is they apparently took it off the market, and then soon after, the FDA gave the drug orphan status. Now, I really want you guys to show The Intercept some love, especially Sharon Lerner and Li Fang, because they reported on this for The Intercept, and they did a really good job explaining what orphan status is, what it was meant for, and how it's actually being abused by pharmaceutical companies to essentially create like this monopolistic environment so the companies can essentially price gouge us when we're desperate to receive some sort of treatment to save our lives, right? So they took it off the market, and they claimed that the reason why why people aren't able to go to a pharmacist and find it is because there was such high demand for the drug that they weren't able to like replenish pharmacies throughout the country. But hours later, that was when the FDA gave the drug orphan status, which means that Gilead is the only pharmaceutical company that is able to produce this drug for 7 years. Now, what is orphan status? Where did it come from? Why is it being abused? Well, we kind of know why it's being abused, because if you create a monopoly over a particular drug that's in high demand, then a pharmaceutical company can stand to set any price that they want for that drug, and they can essentially price gouge us. But the 1983 Orphan Act is really being abused because when it was created, it was meant to incentivize pharmaceutical companies to come up with cures or treatments for rare diseases. Now understand, if you're driven by a profit motive and you know it's gonna cost a lot of money to develop these types of drugs, well, you're less likely to feel any incentive in creating a drug that would treat a rare disease, because that means that your profits will be limited, right? You might not even profit, considering the research and development that goes into these types of drugs. However, the federal government gave Gilead $79 million to develop this drug, okay? So that's our money, And also, coronavirus is not a rare disease. At this point, hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world are suffering from coronavirus. As of the time that this article was printed by The Intercept, or written by The Intercept, I should say, there were more than 40,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the United States alone. So this is not in any way a rare condition, and we're expecting, if things keep going the way they are with this incompetent president and this incompetent administration, we're in for a world of hurt, because as many as half of all Americans will contract coronavirus, or are likely to contract coronavirus, unless we do something pretty drastic, including a federal directive for everyone to stay home, which of course Trump is attempting to back off of. So how did they get this orphan status? How are they able to justify what the FDA has basically given them? This patent on this drug that could be a breakthrough for treating coronavirus. Well, it turns out that Trump, of course, has a coronavirus task team that's full of all sorts of corporate goons, people who used to be lobbyists, people who only care about exploiting situations like this for profit. And so there's a guy named Joe Grogan who is on the coronavirus task force, and he actually worked as a lobbyist for Gilead between 2011 and 2017. So just let that sink in for a minute, okay? You have a lobbyist for one of the major pharmaceutical companies. He was a lobbyist for years, 6 years, now working in the federal government on the coronavirus task force, which should be terrifying and also infuriating, right? So that type of government corruption is par for the course. We've been, frustrated about this for so long, And now when we're dealing with a global pandemic, I mean, lives are always on the line when you have that type of corruption. But when you have a global pandemic, when you have a pandemic that impacts the United States, there are far more lives at risk. And so that's something that I think most people need to be aware of. And it's amazing to me to hear all of these well-paid television journalists expressing shock at Donald Trump, arguing that the solution for coronavirus can't be worse than the virus itself, right? So they're like, oh my gosh, is Trump saying that corporate profit and the economy is more important than human lives? Yeah. It's not like it's the first time he said it. It's not the first time he's implied it. His actions have proven that over and over again. The way Trump carries himself, the way our politicians over decades have carried themselves when it comes to these types of issues has made it abundantly clear that in our society, our lives take a back seat to corporate profits, period. And so it's frustrating to see that shock by journalists, because if they were really doing their jobs, if they really understood how our system worked and how ingrained corruption is in our political system, then they wouldn't be surprised at all. It would just be another day. And so they really don't have any right to be surprised or shocked. What we need to do, and I think Richard Wolff, I tweeted this, so check out my Twitter account to see what I'm talking about. But back in 2018, Richard Wolff had tweeted something about how, the Great Depression was a moment where, people fought for less inequality. But in the upcoming economic downturn, and remember, he predicted this back in 2018, we need to change the system. It's not good enough to do some reforms, a little here, a little there, and hope that things will get better, right? I think that we need to really rethink this system overall and really start from the bottom up, because right now we're at the bottom. This is trash. What we're dealing with right now is trash. We need to really rebuild this system from the bottom up in a way that has proper safeguards to prevent this type of greed standing in the way of saving lives. So those are my thoughts. Tell me what you guys think. I also tweeted out this Intercept article. Again, huge shout out to the reporters there. They do such a great job, and I really appreciate them doing this type of reporting that we just don't get in many mainstream sources. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. See you soon.